Welcome to week 3, Yoga for Posture. My name is Brianna with Premise Health. And today we're going to center ourselves as normal in a nice, comfy, easy seat. But then we're going to do a little bit of standing before we come back down to the ground. Not a lot of standing, but just so you know what we're doing today. We are going to be working on our core today. I will give you lots of options because I know everybody is in a different place with their core strength. So, for now, I'm going to stay up here playing the singing bowls as we center, which is a little bit different than normal. But go ahead and find a nice, comfy, easy seat. You can sit cross-legged. You can have your legs in front of you. You can be kneeling on your heels. Whatever feels good in your body. See if you can sit up nice and tall. Straight spine, shoulders stacked over your hips. Relax the shoulders down and back away from your ears. Slight tuck to your chin, not a lot, but try not to let your neck lean backwards. Nice long neck. Maybe close your eyes or soften your gaze for a moment. And just take a moment here to arrive into your space. Set everything else aside for the next hour and really be fully present on your mat in your body. Check in with your body, noticing what you feel and where you feel it. Notice as you've been sitting here just for a few moments already, have you started to round in your shoulders, maybe slump forward? Notice if you're leaning maybe to one side or the other. Just kind of check in, all without judgment. And then take a nice big inhale through your nose. Open mouth, exhale, let it go. One more time, nice big inhale through your nose. Open mouth, exhale, let it go. And then slowly start to bring your eyes open. And we are going to start standing for a moment because I want to do something with our feet. Our posture, our body, everything starts from the feet all the way up. It's a whole chain here. So start standing. One of the previous weeks we did a seated kind of rolling with our eyes closed. Today we're going to do something a little bit with our eyes closed standing. Only if you feel comfortable with your eyes closed. So make sure in your space you've got some clearance around you because you may not realize it, but you might move as we do this. So again, feel free to close your eyes, soften your gaze if nothing else, and just start to march in place. You don't have to march with knees really high, but just start to march in place. Keep moving like that. In a minute, not yet, but in a second, I'm going to tell you to stop. And when I tell you to stop, I want you to stop and not move anything. Don't adjust. Don't change anything. Just stop. All right. In 3, 2, 1, and stop. Don't move anything. Blink your eyes open. Look at me. I've turned a little bit. I'm facing the screen. I'm turned to my right. It might look like my left to you. But notice where your feet are, which direction they're pointing, what's going on with your body. So for me, I already know this. I've got a tight issue going on this side of my body. So that's what made me twist a little bit to that side as we did that. Notice how far your feet are apart. This is most likely your natural stance. And notice whether your feet are turned in or out. So some people might be externally rotated. Some people might be more internally rotated. Maybe you've got one foot that goes out and the other's pretty straight. Just kind of notice. That's most likely your natural stance. So all right. The next thing we're going to do is work a little bit with our feet muscles. We don't do that a lot. And I would guess that many of you wear shoes most of your day, especially if you're in the office. Got to wear shoes. That's just the way we are. So a lot of people wear shoes. Most people don't go barefoot too much of the day. Even when they get home, they put on maybe house shoes or some kind of comfy inside shoes. So our feet muscles over time don't get the work that they used to when humans did not wear shoes. Find your feet somewhat straightforward. Again, they can be a little bit out or a little bit turned in, but try not to have them a lot in either direction. See if you can pick up all 5 of your toes, spread them nice and wide, and then plant them back on the ground. Now here's the tricky part, and it's going to be hard to see on your screen probably, but try to keep the 4 little toes connected to the floor. See if you can lift just your big toe. And then place your big toe back on the ground. Press your big toe into the floor. See if you can lift your 4 little toes. They may not lift very much. Place them back on the ground. Keep switching. Lift the big toe. Put it back down. Lift the 4 little toes. Put them back down. A couple more times through that, noticing which one is easier for you. So some people, one will be a lot easier than the other. Some of you may not be able to do either one. Some of you might find both of them very easy. It just depends on your feet muscles. All right, you can stop that, shake it out. But our feet muscles is what is going to help us to root down through the ground, lengthen up through our spine, and stand nice and tall. It's also going to help with our balance. And we're going to work a lot of core today that's also going to work on balance. So with that being said, let's come back to a seat. And again, notice how you're sitting. Are you leaning forward, slumping over, leaning to one side? Notice your knees. If you've got tight hips, your knees might be a little bit higher. Maybe it's harder to sit up nice and tall. Feel free to sit on something. A block, a blanket, a pillow, anything that will elevate your hips. Let's just get a few little spinal movements in here. Inhale, arms up overhead. Exhale, bring them back down. Inhale, reach up. Bring your right hand down to the ground. Reach your left arm up and over. Inhale, back through the center. Plant your left hand. Right hand reaches up and over. Just keep moving side to side with your breath. One more time to each side. And then bring your arms up overhead in the center. Take a nice big inhale here, and as you exhale, twist to one side. I don't care where you twist to, left or right. Front hand can be in the center of your body. Maybe it comes to the outside of your opposite thigh or knee. Your back hand is right up next to your body. So if I turn sideways, try not to be like this, relaxed into the pose. See if you can use your back hand to lengthen through your spine. Inhale, and as you exhale, maybe twist a little bit further. Always breathing, finding a nice, comfortable pace to your breath. Inhale back to the center. Exhale, twist to the other side. Notice as you're twisting, if one side twists a little bit further than the other. Get your neck involved here. Look over your back shoulder. Inhale back to the center. Bring your hands down and find your way into a tabletop. So in our tabletop, wrists are under shoulders, knees are under hips. If having your palms flat on the ground is a little bit uncomfortable in your wrists here, you can do fists for wrists. So your fists, your hands are in fists, and those fists are right underneath your shoulders. In your tabletop, drop your belly, pull your chest forward for cow pose. As you exhale, press the ground away, tuck your chin to your chest, cat pose. Keep moving through your cat-cow, your pace, your breath, moving from your tailbone all the way up to the base of your skull. And if it feels good to move side to side, feel free to move side to side. Maybe sink your hips back a little bit or make some circular movement. Just move your spine in all directions here. All right, come back to your tabletop. So I'm going to give you some options here. We're going to work toward bird dog. And what bird dog is basically is it's opposite hand, opposite leg. But first step is just to lift one arm, then the other, then maybe one leg, then the other. Really engaging your core as you do this. If you're comfortable lifting opposite arm, opposite leg, that's what we're going to do. I'm also going to give you the option here to crunch in knee to elbow. So what that would look like would be knee to elbow. It takes a little bit of core. So I'm going to do the knee to elbow a couple of times, and then I'm just going to revert back to a regular bird dog. Pick the one that feels good to you. We're going to work with our breath. As you inhale, reach your right arm forward, left leg back. Exhale, knee to elbow or lower back down. Inhale, extend. Exhale, knee to elbow. Inhale, lengthen. If you're doing just bird dog, switch sides. Keep going. Knee to elbow or just bird dog, extending. Coming back to all fours, extending. Back to all fours. Inhaling. Exhaling. Inhale. Exhale. The next time your right arm and left leg are extended, or maybe just your left leg, hold here. This involves core work. Try to get your leg parallel to the floor if you can. Nice and strong. Come back to tabletop. Extend left arm and right leg, or just right leg, your choice. And come back to tabletop. All right, from here, take your knees mat distance apart, toes together, sink your hips back, child pose. Going to give you a little bit of a rest before our next core movement. When you're ready, inhale back to tabletop. So bring your knees back about hip distance apart. Tuck your toes. Take a nice big inhale. And as you exhale, downward dog. Hips are up toward the ceiling. We talked about this before. Try to get a nice long spine. So instead of having straight legs with a rounded spine, see if you can maybe bend your knees a little bit. Straight spine. Now, here's the trick. Keep your chin tucked to your chest. As you inhale, lift up on your tippy toes and roll forward, almost like your body is a wave, and end in a plank. Now, when you get in the plank, feel free to lower your knees if that works for you. Hold that plank for a moment. Try not to sink into your shoulders. Really press the ground away. Take a nice big inhale. Exhale, downward dog. So we're going to move through that about 3 or 4 more times, your choice. Inhale, lift up on your tippy toes. way forward into your plank. Exhale back to downward dog. Inhale up on your tippy toes, way forward. Exhale, downward dog. Inhale, way forward. Exhale, downward dog. One more time. Inhale, up on your tippy toes. Way forward. Downward dog. Lower back to your knees. You can sit back on your heels. Shake your wrists out for a moment if you need to. All right. Next one we're going to do is going to involve our back muscles. So a lot of times when people think of core, they think of what we call the mirror muscles, just your abs, the ones that everybody sees, right? At least in the gym, those are the ones people take pictures of. But your core is made up of so much more than just your six-pack, if you have one. Most of us don't. Your core is also your back muscles. It's also your hip muscles, your inner thighs. So like basically from mid-thigh up to maybe your rib cage. Like this is all your core. You've got a lot of different muscles doing a lot of different things. And if they become imbalanced, that's where you can find yourself leaning one way or another or not being nice and tall. So back muscles, unless you go to the gym a lot, most people don't typically work the back muscles. We're going to work them today. Part of this might be challenging for some of you, so do the best you can. It's going to start hopefully fairly easily laying on the ground. If you need to lay on a blanket or a pillow or something to make laying on the ground a little more accessible, please feel free. You may want to watch first. We're going to stack our hands with our elbows out wide. So our elbows are not going to be down by our body. They're out wide. Your forehead is going to connect to your hands. Mine is off my hands right now so that you can hear me. But when I show you, my forehead will be on my hands. My feet, the top of my feet are going to stay on the floor. Try not to let your legs lift off the floor. They're going to want to, trust me, but keep pressing into the floor. And all you're going to do is lift and lower. So here's what it's going to look like. Inhale to lift. Head is connected to the hands. Exhale to lower. Inhale to lift. Exhale to lower. So do that on your own, maybe 3 to 5 times, depending on your pace and your breath. Doesn't matter if you get half an inch off the ground or 5 inches off the ground. Notice the activation in your back muscles when you do that. The last time you lift up, see if you can hold up and breathe a couple of times. And then lower back down. Turn your head to one direction. Maybe shake your hips a little bit because you're using your back muscles. You might feel that in your lower back. All right. Part 2 of this exercise. Hands are going to stay the same. Head is going to stay connected to the hands. But this time the arms are going to stay on the floor and we're going to work to lift our legs from the hips. Not from the knees. We're not just bending. We're going to lift the legs. So, in theory, here's what it's going to look like. Inhale to lift. Exhale to lower. Lift and lower. So, try that a few times, noticing where you feel the engagement of the muscles this time. Hopefully more in your glutes, your rear. Notice if your legs want to go out wide or if they can stay somewhat parallel to each other. Use your inner thighs to keep your legs together. The last time you lift, hold, take a couple of breaths, and lower back down. Turn your head the opposite direction. Take a few breaths and rest here. And then, you might have guessed, we're going to combine those movements, but I'm going to show you some options for your arms. So depending on your shoulders and your range of motion and your flexibility, you can pick any of the 3 options. First one is just what we've done. Hands stacked, elbows out wide, forehead on your hands, inhale to lift, exhale to lower. If you want, you can bring your arms down by your side, palms facing down. Head is looking at the ground. You want to keep your neck nice and long. The tendency for most people is to crunch their neck up. Keep it nice and long. Keep your chin tucked to your chest. Inhale to lift, exhale to lower. Last and more challenging is Superman. Arms are straight in front, but again, you're not lifting your head and neck. Your head is staying looking at the floor. Inhale to lift, exhale to lower. So go ahead and give that a try again, 3 to 5 depending on your breath. Notice where you feel the activation in your back. Is it more in your lower back, more in your glutes? Notice which one is harder for you to lift, your chest or your legs. All just noticing that this is a great way to work your back without having to go to the gym, put heavy weights on. You can just lay on your floor at home, lifting your head, lifting your feet. When you're done, go ahead and come back down to the ground, bend your legs, and windshield wiper them side to side. All right, lower your feet back to the ground. While we're here, laying on the ground, we're going to stretch some of our chest muscles and our shoulder muscles. So extend one arm straight out to the side. Try not to have your hand up high or down low, but same level as your shoulder. Use your other hand to press your body off the ground and roll onto the shoulder of the extended arm. Be mindful of any issues you have with your shoulder. You never want pain here. Just a nice stretch. If you want, your top leg can stay there or it can step behind you like a kickstand. And then slowly roll back onto your belly. The arm that's extended, bend at the elbow so your elbow forms an L shape or a 90-degree angle here. And then roll back on top. You won't get as far. It's a deeper muscle into your pec muscle. And slowly come back to the middle. Windshield wiper your legs side to side for a moment. And then we're going to do the other side. So extend your other arm. Roll on top of that shoulder. Find your stretch. Really important to keep the front muscles of your pecs, your shoulders open. And keep your back muscles, the upper back muscles, strong. Because when we sit at a desk, sit at a computer, sit in the car, sit at the table, weak back muscles and tight chest muscles is what cause those shoulders to round forward. Come back to your belly, bend your extended arm into that 90-degree angle and roll back on top. Make sure you're breathing here. And come back to the middle. Bend the knees, windshield wiper your legs side to side. And then find your way into what we call Sphinx pose. So elbows are directly under your shoulders. Forearms are parallel to each other. So think of the number 11. Try not to have your hands on top of one another or out wide. Just parallel to each other. Pull your chest forward, almost like you're trying to pull yourself forward on your mat. Squeeze your glute muscles to help protect your lower back. And maybe you hang out right here. If you want to stretch your hip flexors and your quads. Bend one knee, flex your foot. Notice if that hip came off the ground, and press your hip into the floor. That might get you a bigger stretch. If you want a bigger stretch, take your hand back, maybe grab your foot, bring your heel closer to your body. And slowly release that side. If you're stretching your hip flexors, bend the opposite knee, press your hip into the floor. Maybe you reach back to grab. And then feel free to relax that. Modification, shoulder issues. If you have shoulders and you can't do what we just did on the floor, you can do it against a wall, and it doesn't have to be a very big opening. You can just stand here and have your hand just a tiny bit behind you. As long as you get a little bit of stretch, you do not have to roll way over. We are to some core work. I told you it was going to be a little bit core intensive. So what we're going to do here, and I don't have a stopwatch, that's okay, but I'll count. We're going to hold a plank, then we're going to hold a side plank on both sides, and I'll explain why those are important in just a minute. But let's talk about the plank. So a lot of times we get into a plank and it's either this or it's this, or maybe it's this with knees down. That's not really working the core that we want it to work. So we want to work this whole area here. And a plank is a great way to work your core without doing a ton of crunches, a ton of sit-ups, any other stuff. So you can do a plank with straight arms. And again, if you have wrist issues, you can do those fists for wrists, especially anytime your wrists are directly under your shoulders. I would not recommend fists for wrists in a downward dog, but in a plank, perfectly fine. You can also do it on forearms if you want. Your legs, knees can be off the ground or on the ground, your choice. Like I said though, if your knees are on the ground, they are not directly under your hips. This is not working my core at all. They need to be so that your knees to your shoulders form a nice line. Wrists are under the shoulders, knees off the ground. If you find that you've got a dip in your lower back, think about tucking your hip bones towards your rib cage. And if you're sinking between your shoulder blades, press the ground away from you. So, figure out which version of plank you're going to do. And we're going to hold it for about 30 seconds. So, do the best you can. If you need to take a break, get back in it, feel free. All right, ready, and go. Nice big breaths. Try not to look down at your feet. Try to look straight down or maybe a little bit forward. And slowly come out of that. I honestly don't know exactly how long that was. I tried to count a little bit, but counting and talking is hard, so somewhere around 30 seconds. If you are not to where you can hold a plank for 30 seconds yet, that is your first goal. Then eventually work up to where you can hold a plank for a minute. If you can hold a plank for a minute, you've got pretty strong core work. So, side plank is next. Same options, straight arm, forearm, knees down, knees off the ground. I will show you what each of those look like. I like to start in a plank, and remember, fist for wrist is an option. my right wrist, when I do side plank and my right wrist is the only one on the ground, I do fist for wrist. So you can start in a plank, rotate sideways. Both feet, the toes are facing the long edge of your mat. You can have them both on the ground, but it's your lower leg that is your stabilizer. So if your front leg is the one you're mainly putting weight on, see if you can change that. You can stack your feet, maybe you even float it. If you're doing knees down, again, that knee is not right under your hip. It's angled. Again, you can keep that top leg on the ground or float it, whatever you want. You can also be on your forearm. So we're only going to hold side plank for 15 seconds. This is a little bit more challenging for people, only because sometimes you have only one arm. Sometimes the obliques are not as strong as maybe your abdominals. So figure out which one you're going to do. 15 seconds, ready, and go. And release. So again, it's hard to count and talk at the same time, but while you rest before we go to the other side, when you're in that plank, always try to maintain your straight line. Try not to let your hips drop toward the floor. Try not to sink into your shoulder. Try to stay nice and lifted. Actively press the ground away from you. All right, other side. Ready and go. Whoops. And you might lose your balance. This would be me letting my hip drop. This would be me sinking into my shoulder. And relax. All right, nicely done. So if you do nothing else every day, maybe do a few cat-cows, maybe do a couple of planks. Build that strength. All right, we've done the side plank. Okay, let's see what time it is. We're good. All right, let's lay on our back. Go ahead and hug your knees into your chest for a moment. We've got more core work coming, so don't think that you're through. But feel free to hug your knees in, maybe rock side to side. And give yourself a big squeeze. And then we're going to do what I call dead bug. It's basically opposite hand, opposite leg. And again, I'm going to show you some options. So if you do have wrist issues and planks and bird dogs and all that forward facing stuff does not feel good on your wrists, you've got options from the back. So you can start with your knees bent, legs are at a 90-degree angle, arms up overhead. If you start to lower your right heel and your left arm, notice if your back comes off the ground. The goal here in all of this is to press your lower back into the floor. Pull your belly into your spine. So you're going to lower, keep that low back pressing in, and come back up, switch sides. Opposite arm, opposite leg. If that feels good, you want more of a challenge, straighten your legs. Opposite arm, opposite leg. Again, low back, always pressing into the mat. If you get right here and your low back starts to come off the ground, that's where you stop. That's your limit. Come right back up. Find your dead bug. Do about 4 on each side. If you've been doing them, maybe do a couple more. Keep your low back pressing into the floor. Couple more times. All right. Bring your feet down to the floor. Take your feet mat distance apart for a moment and windshield wiper your legs side to side. Open up your hips a little bit. And then bring your feet mat distance apart, or hip distance apart, I'm sorry. Try to have your ankles somewhat under your knees, so your feet are not way out in front, nor are they right next to your body. Just about under your knees. Hands are down by your side. You may notice laying here again that there's just a slight arch in your lower back. That's natural, that's your natural curve. But to get into a bridge pose, I want you to press your lower back to the floor. You're going to feel your tailbone tuck up toward the ceiling a little bit. When that happens, press through your feet and roll your spine off the ground, one vertebra at a time. And then do the opposite. Roll back down, one notch at a time. Tailbone is the last to come down. Keep moving through that motion. When you get to the top, engage your glutes here for a moment. See if you can lift your hips a little higher. Notice if your knees want to go out wide. Keep acting like you're trying to bring your inner thighs toward each other. Slowly roll back down. If you have knees that really want to go out wide, or maybe you're not sure if your feet are placed properly, if you have a block or a book or something that's, about 3 or 4 inches wide, you can place that between your knees and lift and lower as you're squeezing that block, that book, whatever it is you have. And that's going to help keep your legs straight forward. Couple more of those. And then come down. Again, take your feet mat distance apart. Windshield wiper your legs side to side. And then we are going to do some ab work, some of those mirror muscles. We're going to do what I call yoga bicycle crunches. So normally you've seen bicycle crunches. You go side to side. We're just going to do yoga ones. So hug your right knee into your chest. Extend your left leg long. Peel your head and shoulders a little bit off the ground. Lift your left foot a few inches off the ground. Your right hand can come to the right knee, left hand to the right ankle, and switch, and switch, 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 switch. 2 more on each side. 1 more. And lower all the way down. Extend your legs, extend your arms. Nice big good morning stretch. And then hug your knees into your chest. And this next one I want you to be very, very, very mindful of. So we're going to play a little bit. As adults, sometimes we forget to play. But we're going to play with rocking and rolling. And I'm going to show you some options, again, depending on where you are. Now, first option, hands are going to come behind the hamstrings. And you're just going to rock and roll. Massage out that spine. If you want a little bit of a challenge, see if you can come up into a V-sit and stop. Using your core to stop your forward momentum. Then roll back down. Come up and stop. See if you can hold it for a couple of seconds. Keep doing that. If you want more of a challenge, you might have to get a little more momentum going. And again, be very, very mindful. If you don't think you can do this, please do not try it unless you have a lot of soft stuff underneath you, because if you don't make it, you're going to fall back on your booty. But if you would like, you can gain some momentum. See if you can plant your feet and stand up. Again, be mindful. I know I can do it. I'm also on carpet. But if you want to try it, you can also use your hands a little bit to get up. So see if you can maybe rock and roll a few times. Maybe make it up to standing. If you're not rocking and rolling to a standing position, come on up to a standing. We are going to do a standing balance pose before we get to some of the cooling down stuff. So stand on up. Remember that feet exercise we did at the beginning of class? Think about pressing your big toes into the ground. We're going to do what we call tree pose. It's one of the basic balance postures of yoga, and you can do it without ever leaving, or without both feet ever leaving the ground if you so choose. Shift your weight into your right leg. Lift your left heel, bring it close to your right ankle, and rotate your left knee out. So maybe your left heel is touching your right leg, maybe it's a little bit away. The tendency for a lot of people is to sink into the standing hip. See if you can press back up out of it. In yoga, core and a focal point is key to balance. So find, we call it a drishti in yoga, something that's in front of you that's not moving. It can be on the ceiling, on the floor, on the wall, wherever. I don't care what your hands do. They can come to your heart center, they can go up high, out wide, they can stay right here. This can be your tree pose right here. It is a little bit of a hip opener here, so try not to have your knees straight forward. Open it to the side. If you want to test your balance, press down through your right big toe, lift your left foot maybe to your calf muscle, maybe to your inner thigh, maybe somewhere along your leg. Just be mindful if it's on your knee so that your knee doesn't go side to side. Find that core. Act like you're zipping up your core work here. And a lot of people ask me, what does it mean to engage your core? I used to tell some people I trained that if I came and stood in front of you and acted like I was going to punch you in the gut, what do? You squeeze everything in, right? Lower back out of that, shake it out. So that's how you engage. You kind of zip up, squeeze everything in, tighten. Shift your weight to your left leg, lift the heel of your right leg, rotate your knee out. That can be your tree pose. Just again, try to stay nice and tall. Maybe your foot comes off the ground. Give yourself some grace. Everybody falls at some point, including myself, so you might fall out of it. However, if you get in tree pose and you fall out, don't try to pop right back in it. Reset, readjust, zip up your core. Find your balance again. Your arms can be out to the side if that helps to balance. Your tree can wave in the wind. Balance is a great thing to have, especially as we age, so that we don't step off of a curb or a step, roll our ankle, fall to the ground, break our femur, break our hip. We want to stay nice and healthy, and core work is going to help do that. All right, lower back down, shake it out. I want to do one more balancing pose here while we're standing. So I'm going to turn to this side. We're going to do what I call airplane. The difference between airplane and warrior three, if you ever go to a yoga class, is really just the positioning of the arms. My shoulders don't like to be extended very much, so I always choose to take my arms back and work on opening my chest muscle. Place your balance on one leg and step the other leg behind you straight. And then hinge forward from your hips so your body is in a straight line. Maybe you just lift those toes off the ground. This can be your airplane right here. Otherwise, lift from your heel and let that be what drives your chest forward. Slight bend in your standing leg. Give yourself some buoyancy here. Maybe your palms face the ground and come back up. Shake it out. So that what most people tend to do here is they lean their body and then they just lift their leg. We want that nice long line. Also, if you're tight in your standing hamstring, your opposite hip may want to open. See if you can keep it parallel to the floor. And come back up. And come on back down to the ground. Lower down to your back and hug your knees in. All right, we mentioned all those muscles. We've got obliques, we've got abdominal muscles, we've got transverse abs, rectus abdominis, we've got all the things. They get tight. We're going to stretch them out with a low back twist. I'm going to show you two different options you can do. The first one is your knees are going to stay bent, arms are going to be out in a T, and you're just going to drop your legs to one side. Try to keep both shoulders connected to the floor here. If that is too much, start on your side and just open the top arm. This is also going to get into that shoulder stretch, a little bit of rotation in the hips like we talked about earlier. And that reminds me, so I'll come back and show you the exercise here in just a second. If you want a different twist, you can straighten one leg and take the opposite knee across your body. Some people prefer one way, other people prefer another. Either way, both shoulders are on the floor and you're getting that low back twist. Come back to the middle and switch sides. So if you're doing both knees, just drop them over to the other side. If you've got one leg extended, find your twist. And come back to the middle. And we're going to do, we've got a little bit of time, so we are going to do the shoulder circles. I think we have done it in week 1 or 2. I can't remember off the top of my head. But great range of motion for your arms. Great opening for your chest. Great way to see where you're at. I'm going to put my head toward the camera so you can see. You're going to lay on your side in what I call a fetal position, meaning your hips are hinged, bent 90 degrees. Your knees are stacked on top of each other. Arms are out in front of you. If you have something that feels better to rest your head on than the floor, go for it. You can put a block or a pillow there. Take your top hand and make a big circle. Try to keep it on the ground or as close to the ground as you can. When it gets overhead, you'll flip your palm. You'll let your shoulders open, but try not to let your hips roll over. When your hips roll over, it takes the stretch out of the pec muscles and the arm. So try to keep your hips stacked. Take that arm all the way around. Again, as close to or on the floor as you can. And come back around. Now, I can keep my hand on the ground for most of the time around the circle, most days that I do this. But many, many, many people, maybe even you, it will look something like this. That's okay. The more you do this, the more open, and see right there, I feel something. So if you feel something, if it feels like a good stretch, stop, breathe into it, see if you can let some tension go, and then carry on. After you've done a few on one side, flip over to the other side, find your circles. The other thing that most people do here, see I'm coming off the ground on this side. I'm right-handed. This is my dominant arm. But the most common mistake that people do in this is this. Really fast. The slower you go in a lot of these movements, the more you're going to really feel what's going on. So nice and slow through those circles. And if being on the ground even bothers it, if you still have shoulder mobility issues, just do it from a seated position or standing and just try to get that full range of motion in your arm. All right. Once you're equal on both sides, go ahead and lay back on your back for a moment. Maybe find a happy baby. And we haven't really stretched a lot of quads and hip flexors today, so this may or may not be accessible today. So feel free to put your hands behind your hamstrings. Bring your knees toward your arms, but keep your feet up toward the ceiling. A lot of people do it this way. It changes the stretch when you take your feet up. Maybe you're able to reach your feet. Try not to let your head and shoulders come off the ground, and try not to let your tailbone curl up. Keep pressing toward the floor. And then bring everything in together. Give yourself a big hug. Find anything else that feels good in your body. I'm going to give you a few minutes of rest while I play the singing bowls, and then if there's any questions, I'll try to answer them. So find your way to your back or to a comfortable seat or whatever kind of Shavasana resting pose feels good to you. If you are on your back and laying flat does not feel good, bend your knees. Place your feet on the outer edges of your mat and let your knees rest against one another. Close your eyes. Soften your gaze. Let go of any tension that you feel. Let go of any thoughts or judgments about what your body could or couldn't do today. And for the next minute or two, just be. Start to bring awareness back to your body. Start to deepen your breath. If you would like to remain as you are and you have time in your day to do that, please feel free to stay just as you are. If you need to get on with the rest of your day, start with small movements. Fingers, toes, wrists, ankles. Eventually finding bigger movement, maybe a nice big good morning stretch. Maybe hugging your knees into your chest. And then if and when you're ready, find your way back to a seat on your mat. Eyes can be closed or softly gazing toward the floor. Hands can rest in your lap, on your knees, or at your heart center. Take a moment here to check in with yourself. Notice any difference in your thoughts, in your body, and anything from the beginning of class to now. Has anything shifted? Take a nice big inhale through your nose. Open mouth, exhale, let it go. As you go about the rest of your day and the rest of your week, may you be happy, healthy, and at peace.